Hi, Anastasia. Great to see you again.
Good to see you again.
You are dressed very nicely.
We have the mistake ambassador. I have to be careful.
Yeah, that's true. Perhaps it's only the top half that you are dressed nicely, and the top bottom is pajamas.
That's quite typical these days. But to be honest, today I'm all well dressed, and that is because I thought, well, I don't wear my clothes these days at all. So let's make sure that I'm properly dressed.
Hi, Gal.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Gal.
So I guess we're going to wait a few minutes, right? To see if the audience starts building up.
Hi, everybody. Can you see me okay?
Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi. Can you? Yeah, everything coming through good. It's taking a while to come through.
Is that your house or that's the background? The amount of books behind you?
Yeah, that's my
Actual house.
Many years of collections of stuff.
Wow, it's really it was so vast amount of books I see that I thought it's a background that you put.
Yeah, you just pull it down. There's a thing in. Now, do you know how to share screen on this? Because I've not used this platform before.
I actually was wondering the same thing because I have some slides that I'd like to use for my opening.
Can't see.
Try to Google it quick. And for our audience, I will say that we will begin within maybe 1 minute. Let's just try to wait for.
If you click on the little screen with the red line across it, it pops up share screen. So hopefully.
Hey, gentlemen. So that's if you're looking to do screen sharing, it is the monitor with the line through it. And then go right ahead. Thank you for joining, and I'll let you take it from here. I think we should maybe begin as soon as possible.
Cody, should we wait or just begin?
So just go ahead and begin. It's a recorded session, so go right ahead and begin.
Okay. Great.
Thanks, Cody.
So, thanks. Thank you, everyone, for joining. My name is Gal Shofroni. I'm head of renewable energy sector here in the Israeli Electricity Authority. As these are my last days in position, I would say that I'm quite excited about this panel, and I'm really sure that the Electricity Authority has much to learn and improve and really look at our neighboring countries, countries holding similar characteristics, facing not so different challenges as us, and setting even higher goals for renewable energy. So, as I said, I myself am looking forward to this panel. And what do we have planned for you? So I'll start with presenting Israel's main challenges for reaching its 30% renewable energy target by 2030. Of course, we'll try to look at it from the perspective of the energy island and talk about unbundling. Then we'll get a short overview about the UK electricity sector. Paul will present. Again, the challenges, the changes it's overgoing, and of course what we can learn from all that, a more advanced market than us. Then we'll have a round of questions and discussion. And I think let's begin with a quick round of the panelists introducing themselves. Okay, so Anastasio, would you like to begin?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be participating in this panel, and thank you very much for inviting me. So my name is Anastasios Roussis. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Smart Power Networks, an emerging technology SME of the energy sector. Particularly, we are developing control and automation solutions for energy systems to unlock and be able to better optimize, manage, and control the various assets that have been mentioned by the previous speakers on the main stage. I'm an electrical engineer by trade. I have been working more than a decade on the renewable energy sector, always trying to optimally integrate renewable energy resources, and I have done that through various roles as a researcher, as a consultant, and recently I have been advising the Greek government on energy-related aspects, particularly as a member of the Greek Sectoral Council for Environment, Energy, and Sustainable Mobility, which falls under the Ministry of Development and Investments of the Hellenic Republic. Thanks very much, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Anastasios. Neil?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm really honored to be in this panel. I have three hats that I'm wearing relevant to the panel here. I have many more hats in my life as we all, but three that are relevant here. One is I'm the business development manager of SimPower, a Dutch company working in countries in Europe in demand response and flexibility management. We have entered the Israeli market 3 years ago, working closely with the Ministry of Energy, the chief scientist, and with Gal and his colleagues in the Electric Authority and the TSO, the transmission system operator. This is one hat. The second hat, I'm also a founder of a dual access tracker technology, trackers of a PV photovoltaic. And the third one, I'm a researcher, a volunteering researcher in the Heschel Institute, the net zero team, net zero energy team. As a researcher, we're publishing white papers and research papers on the transmission of Israel to 100% renewable energy and the whole switch to a carbon-free economy.
Thank you. And last, we have Paul.
Thank you very much, Gal. So, yes, my name is Paul Gordon. I'm the business leader for Innovator Support and an international at the Energy Systems Catapults. The Catapults is a network of sort of technology innovation centres in the UK across different sectors. There are 9 of them. And the Energy Systems Catapult specifically, we are looking at what is the energy system evolving into for the future, and how do we take essentially a whole systems approach to address that. So this is thinking about not just the innovation, but also the wider issues that might be blocking that innovation, whether that's market, policy, regulation, thinking about this from the consumer side, etc. And then at the same time, we do a lot of work supporting innovation directly. So my specific role in the Energy Systems Catapult is to run an incubator, an accelerator, where we work directly with organisations, startup businesses in the UK to help them navigate that whole system approach and think about that, what the future energy system is going to look like. So, for example, how they might evolve their business models, thinking about future revenue streams that might come through changes in market structures, such as the introduction of flexibility markets, for example. And we link with other partners to support them on their more conventional business support needs. I also look after international, so we're trying to also form collaborations with other countries and develop projects overseas. And that also opens up opportunities for UK innovation. The Energy System Catapult, we're a not-for-profit organisation, but we do get some funding from government in order to develop those assets and capabilities, and we sit essentially between industry, academia, and government. So we really try to play a very convening role there and bring together many of those different parties to address the energy transition and ultimately get to net zero. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So as I said, I'm sure it's going to be very interesting. The panelists here have given you a small taste, so please join us if you just arrived, and stay with us if you're already here. I'll start off by introducing Israel's side. Let me just share my screen here. And are you seeing? Is it? Can you see? Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to introduce Israel. I'm going to talk, of course, about renewable energies, but first of all, I want to start by giving some background about our market. So for years, the Israeli government aimed to privatize the electricity market and conduct structural changes to encourage, of course, competition and more efficiency, and of course, reduce electricity rates. And the IEC, the Israeli Electric Company, which you can see its logo, is a state-owned utility company founded back in 1923. And until 2018, operating in all segments, generation and transmission and distribution, supply and system operation, the entire thing. Still today, the IEC, of course, is the main provider of electricity to Israel, but as I'm going to show you now, is something that is starting to change. So the 2018 structural reform talked about three main aspects. So first, the generation part, decreasing the IEC share of electricity generation, reaching at the last stage 40%. The supply from almost 100% to 60% system operating. So basically, the management will be, we already established it. It's something that is in an ongoing process, but transferring the operating and management of the system to a new governmental owned body that is, of course, separate from the IEC and does not have any link to generation of electricity. And the fourth aspect is something that will not be changed, at least not in this current reform, and the transition and distribution, developing the network. This is something that is supposed to, of course, stay in the IEC's hands for now. And still, I can say that many times we hear it's not enough, and of course, I can understand people saying that, but we need to keep in mind that it's a gradual change and a very thorough process, which is sometimes a bit complex, and of course, as I said, takes time. So let's get straight to renewable energy. We are now standing here in Israel on less than 7%. Our target, the 2030 target, is 30%, which is for us a major step. As I said, we are an energy island, and I think we have all kinds of unique challenges that maybe some countries don't have. I'll try to touch this real quick. So the first challenge is the demographic challenge. So Israel is really kind of an anomaly in this sense. The rate of birth in Israel is unlike any other Western country. It stands at almost 2%. The only Western country whose population is predicted to double over the next 25 years in certain forecasts, as you can see in the graph. And this, along with the relatively high economic growth, which is, of course, a blessing, really brings the demand of electricity. And of course, we have all other aspects, but really I'll keep that for maybe a different panel. Now, another challenge for us is relying almost entirely on the sun as a main resource for renewable energy. Here we can see the roadmap for reaching the 10% target, the 2020 target, as we planned in the beginning of the decade. We can see a very diverse structure, a lot of wind, biogas, biomass, thermal solar, and so on. And here we can see what actually happened, almost totally dominated by PV. Of course, there are reasons why this happened. Here are some. Wind turbines, for example, faced all kinds of obstacles. And of course, the cost of PV really affected the decision about this. And also, I'll just you can read about the other parts, factors for biogas and so on, the planning issues, but I'll just go quickly to the next step, challenge. Let's say that this barrier affects everything, and it's the barrier, the size of the country. So for us, Israel is really a small country with low reserves of open land. Even the Negev area, which is the desert, it's 60% of the country. Most of the land is in use. And when we say, okay, maybe we cannot put up a lot of utility scale PV, let's talk about dual usage. We also see we have kind of low engagement from the private rooftop sector in PV installations. So again, these are challenges. And yeah, that is an overview of Tel Aviv. I think last slide, as I said, the challenge of us being an energy island. So historically, without going into politics, Israel has been surrounded by hostile countries and does not have electricity network, cross-country electricity network. And the development of such, also developing our interconnect network, also faces a lot of obstacles in terms of planning and land authority and so on. So thank you. I will stop sharing my screen now. Tell me if this works. Are you now seeing the regular mode?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will hand it over to Paul to hear about the UK side. Please.
Okay, thank you. I'm hoping that you can see this okay. Is that coming through?
We can indeed, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I've just got 3 slides, conscious that we want to have plenty of time for questions. So this is just really just to set the scene. I started really with just highlighting the supply and demand side in the UK. The Energy Systems Catapult has done released last year our Innovating to Net Zero report. All this is available on our website. It's all publicly available, so please do take a look at that. I've put the link there at the bottom. This looked at two scenarios: clockwork and patchwork. Clockwork being a much more central driven system, patchwork being much more distributed. But the main messages were still very much the same, that you can see that there are really three vectors, energy vectors, that you can start to see coming through from the demand side with respect to much more electrification. So that's with either transport, but also in the UK, you'll see that one of the big challenges is heating, and that's moving from gas boilers across to electrification of heating. Also some move across to hydrogen, which again could either be heavy duty vehicles in some of the transport, or also possibly some of the domestic heating as well. And also district heating networks. So this is connecting, communities onto the same heat network. Equivalent in Israel would presumably the potential for cooling networks. And then on the supply side, you can really see a real major step up there in renewables. Very different from Israel in the fact that this is very much wind driven and very much driven by offshore wind. But you also see a significant increase in nuclear as well. On some of the introductory presentations from the ambassador and Adam Bell, you heard some of the comments around 10-point plan and the recent energy white paper. So lots of announcements have come through in the UK that are really starting to accelerate that sector change. It was moving rapidly anyway. Robert Llewellyn, I think, outlined that very well in terms of the societal changes around the take-up of electric vehicles, for instance. But now the government has really set some really important milestones there for us to achieve. A lot of them are in the next sort of decade. So you look at the target for offshore wind, for instance. You heard about the end of sale for petrol and diesel cars, with that being the idea being that that's 100% replaced by 100% emission vehicles by 2035. So there's a 5-year transition for hybrids. I mentioned about buildings. There was already a ban on gas boilers into new build from 2025, but now the government's also introduced a target of 600,000 heat pumps being installed per year by 2028. That's a massive step up from where we are today. So the number of heat pumps going in today would be in the low tens of thousands right now. Hydrogen, in terms of starting to ramp up that activity, and there's lots of demonstration programs around this, and the announcements also included having the first hydrogen town that's connected on or supplied from 100% hydrogen. Mentioned nuclear, particularly looking at small modular reactors, but also advanced modular reactors. And then lastly, carbon capture, usage and storage, particularly thinking about industrial decarbonisation. And I should have added as well, I mean, hydrogen is a strong play into industrial decarbonisation as well. And a lot of the technology for hydrogen production does need to come with carbon capture and storage in order to ensure that it's carbon neutral. So lastly, this is a section about sort of regulation. So we've over the last few years, we've carried out a program called the Future Power Systems Architecture. And again, if you go on our website, you'll see there's lots of papers on this. And it's really been a fantastic engagement across the sector in the UK, bringing together many, many stakeholders. And what it was asking was, what does the energy system need to look like in 2030? And how do we need to adjust the existing system functions in order to achieve that? And the work highlighted 35 system functions that were either new or extended that needed to be addressed. So I'm not going to go into all those, but I thought it'd be useful just to highlight the 7 core drivers that were highlighted there in those reports. So flexibility was one. So this is about the fact we are going to need to have an energy system which it can deal with both the top down in terms of the central function of supply, but also now what's coming through is the bottom up with many more, for instance, prosumers. So end users that not only consume electricity but also produce electricity. For example, if you've got solar PV on your roof, the fact that the electricity mix is changing massively in terms of the fact we've got much more penetration of renewables, for example. How do we deal with high penetration of variable renewable energy if we've got, for instance, that 40 gigawatts offshore wind? We need to think about the consumer, the end user. If we are now tapping into the flexibility in people's homes, for example. How do you incentivize them? How do you ensure that those are linked into the energy system? A good example there would be things like vehicle to grid. So if somebody is now using my vehicle, for instance, to connect into the system, am I happy about that? What am I going to get in return for it? How do I deal with warranties and battery warranties on the car, and et cetera, recovery from major events or emergencies, again, another key area here. At the moment, although we have a lot of gas on the system in the UK, it is a different energy vector. So if we now move to everything being electrified, what happens if the electricity goes down? Let's just say it's a cold winter's day and my electric vehicle's being charged, my heat pump is connected. What if the electricity system goes down? How do I get my electric vehicle charged so I move around? How do I get my heat pump back up online? Also, if we're now got much more penetration of digitalization that's underpinning a lot of this, how do we deal with the internet, and what if that goes down, if everything is now smart? Active network management, the fact that we need to now do a lot of this more at a local level. So historically, a lot of the transmission and distribution network owners have been relatively passive, but they're now going to have to be much more nimble and agile to deal with the balancing of supply and demand, but at a very local level, even on a street by street basis, with the changes in demand. Going back to the consumer, the emergence of new parties and services. So we know that energy is already starting to move to new service propositions, time of use tariffs are changing, etc. But that will probably continue into new service propositions, energy as a service, heat as a service, mobility as a service, and all these need to be developed. And we need to think about the intermediary parties that will be providing those, and how do we deal with those? How do they get access to the system? How do we link between consumer and networks? What are the regulations that need to be associated with that? And how do we make sure that this is still meeting the needs of the consumer so that they are actually getting a better experience? And lastly, I think I've talked about this already, but the fact that this isn't now just about energy vectors in silos. It's not about electricity and power, and then separately there's the heating and gas network, and then separately there's the petroleum and transport vector. Electricity, heating or cooling in the case of Israel, and transport are now very much interlinked, and will continue to get even more inextricably linked. And how do we deal with that cross-vector nature or multi-vector nature between all those areas? So that's all I just wanted to say by way of context setting. I hope that was useful, and I will try to come back into the stop sharing my screen.
So thank you, Paul, for really this eye-opening overview. So let's start with our first round of questions, and we'll start with Anastasios. So we already understand that the UK is undergoing very big changes. The market is evolving, and the question is, what the Ofgems call for an ESO can mean for the UK energy system and the potential benefit to consumers?
Absolutely, very interesting question indeed. And I think, let me say before I crack on the actual response, that it was really nice for me to see this change happening across both countries, that both are islands, I think energy islands essentially. This needs to be considered. Particularly Israel has started very recently. I have to tell you, you are engaging into a very interesting and challenging journey, and I call it journey because the UK has gotten into this journey many years ago. 32 years ago, 1988 was when the deregulation has started. From this old model of the vertically integrated vertical utilities to start creating a more competitive environment, which of course has great benefits. Particularly, the UK has been through several changes across these three decades, and recently we've had the regulator of the system here asking for an independent system operator, essentially, and this is to create an even more competitive environment with actual benefits down to the consumer. And the benefits can be many here. For example, starting from costs, when you have a single entity owning, operating, planning a network, it may be the case that they will determine investments in assets that are to their interest. Therefore, this may lead to overinvestments that typically are socialized down to the consumers. And of course, when you create different entities owning, planning, and operating the networks, you can avoid these overinvestments. But it's not only about cost savings. Of course, this is of paramount importance, but it's not only that. When you have an independent system operator, this would have enhanced capabilities to manage the energy system, which, as Paul said, becomes more and more complicated. We have these three energy vectors coming together, creating increased challenges in the network. So therefore, you need to have a firm, an entity being responsible to better planning and operating that network for the network itself, and not for any profits for a firm and so on. And something else that we've seen quite a lot on working with several projects, what we need to be aware of is the fact that new types of networks may have new opportunities to reward consumers and generators, what Paul called being prosumers. Therefore, it is about bringing together generation and demand towards ensuring a more proactive role in the balancing of supply and demand, not only in the national network, but across local and national networks. For example, in the UK, we've seen some projects developing local energy markets. A flagship project led by Centrica was the Cornwall Local Energy Marketplace that finished very recently and showed certain benefits. But there are others as well. My business is involved in the Liverpool Multi-Vector Energy Exchange Program, where we develop a local energy marketplace. And what we've seen is that by these LEMs, local energy markets, being embedded into the system, then the consumers or prosumers may have certain benefits. At the moment, these are not allowed. And by transitioning to this full unbundling, fully competitive environment, it may be the case that the regulation will allow these local energy markets to appropriately trade into the market. And the last thing that I wanna clearly highlight, even though it's mentioned already, is the fact that an ISO would have greater responsibility for strategically planning the network, and more importantly, coordinating the various types of networks, this being gas or electricity, and this bringing transmission and distribution networks together along with interconnectors, local markets, towards essentially unlocking a completely whole energy system approach. I hope this gives an overview of some benefits I see, and I'd be happy to get the views of the other participants.
It is. So about questions from our chat. So really, everyone is invited to add their questions, and we'll get back to them after this current round of questions. So Anastasios, thank you very much. I see there's a lot of work yet to be done. So good luck on that. And I want to go straight to Neil, okay, back to the Israeli side. And Neil, ask you said you're here, you have 3 different hats. So I want to ask you, what do you think are the main obstacles nowadays for entrepreneurs in the energy sector in Israel? Which is kind of a broad question, but if you can touch the different aspects.
Yeah, I will try to depict three points that are these challenges. The unbundling of the market that you presented, Gal, is crucial. Is crucial to make the energy leap and to achieve the challenges of global warming and where we want to be with our energy market with net zero emissions. So this unbundling is crucial, but unfortunately, Anastasius, you said it's 32 years since the UK had started. We can't afford 32 years in the Israeli market. We have to do it very, very quickly, because in 32 years, we need to be already with zero emissions, or even in less than 32 years. And to achieve that, we need to do things like the Israeli chutzpah does a lot of times, faster, bolder, and I think we can do it. The United Kingdom is a nation for hundreds of years. We are 70 years. We on this ratio, we need to do what they did in 32 years and 10 years. For this unbundling to be more successful, the first point that I want to pinpoint is that the business sector needs certainty and regulation certainty. And for this, the Electric Authority and all the other regulators have to be more faster and more coherent. We see, even though the reform launched 2 years ago, we still see the IEC putting a lot of challenges and difficulties to advance the reform. We see it with the TSO, which is still part of the IEC. We see it with battery energy storage that the IEC wants to hold. So the generation sector, which, like you presented, the IEC reduces to 40%, is thriving nicely, because there's a lot of room to play for entrepreneurs. On the other segments that you showed, it's still stuck. And we need to be bolder and faster on how we let the market entrepreneurs enter and play. And for that, we need certainty, and we need the regulators to set the rules of the game. The second thing that I want to pinpoint is that the challenges are great, that we need to overcome, and the technological pace is really fast. Faster, most of the time, faster than the regulation. And for that, we need a lot of personnel, good personnel like you, Gal, and I'm sad to hear that you are leaving. We need good personnel. We need organizational structure in the regulation. We need schemes. There are currently a lot of schemes that are lacking, for example, on batteries, on demand response, on opening the market, on the SMP. And these schemes that are lacking, I think it's because there's not enough people in the regulation that can address so many big challenges. And we need much more people, and good people, to help steer the market in quick pace. The third thing that I want to post as a challenge is, I think with the three hats that I'm playing, I feel that there is lack of coordination and synchronization between the ministries. It feels like it's the battle of the Ministry of Energy and the Electric Authority alone, and it shouldn't be like that. The challenge is huge. It has to be with synchronization with the Ministry of Transport, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Planning Administration, the Israeli Land Authority, and everyone should step up to the challenge. And it feels like it's currently only the Ministry of Energy and the Electric Authority is kind of leading the way, and it's not enough, because we need, like you said, Israel is highly regulated, very small in land, and we need a lot of synchronization in order to address agrovoltaic. We need the Ministry of Agriculture. We need to do a grid to vehicle. We need the Ministry of Transport. So there's a lot of things, and this synchronization is really important to do it fast and do it successful.
Thank you very much, Nir. And we have Cody interrupting us just for a short announcement.
You make it seem like it's a bad thing that you get to see my face, Kyle.
It's always great seeing your face.
It's great to see all of you, and Anastasio's looking sharp as ever. Not to say that the rest of you gentlemen aren't looking great, but he really got it together. So the event, we're going to keep this session open because there's still some questions that I think are very important that are going to need to be addressed. So I want to leave this session to be open. I just want to touch on a few notes. I want to thank everyone for joining the event. We're going to be moving to as soon as this session is over. Stay around for the Q&A. The session can continue on. I think there's some very important aspects that need to be addressed. This is a very complex issue that we're discussing here in this session. When it comes to the networking, you just basically need to click I'm ready, and then you will be randomly paired with someone for that speed dating, as I mentioned. In the event chat, we also have a event coming up 1 week from today, focused on the EU. There's a way for you to go register there. But I want to turn it back over to you, gentlemen, and then whenever this is maybe another 5-10 minutes max, and then let's go over to networking and get everyone there, and so we can actually meet people and have these discussions, and you can actually continue these discussions one-on-one. Good luck, gentlemen, answering the questions, and hopefully the crowd isn't too tough on you.
Thank you, Cody. So going back to Paul, or coming back to Paul, you talked earlier about one of the points you mentioned was flexibility. What are the potential solutions and opportunities for enabling flexibility in your point of view?
I think this is really an interesting development. If you're thinking of Robert and his 10-year horizon, if you look at the next 10 years in the energy space, flexibility is really going to take off. But there's still a lot that needs to be thought through in this space. It's quite complex. First of all, it's worth thinking about in the UK that we, at the moment, at the local level, so we do, Anastasios mentioned about the ESO, but at the local level, it's really just a sort of very passive system right now. So we have what we call distribution network operators, but for them to really capture the benefit at right the way down to the domestic and property level, then you need to move to what we call a distribution system operator. So you start to capture at the local level what might be available there, whether it's looking at some of the challenges around frequency or voltage drop, or some of the challenges on the system that way, or if it's looking at capacity and introduction of energy storage and so on and so forth. So in order to sort of capture that, there's two aspects here that are really important. I mean, it's very complex, but to try and simplify, the first is the end user. So when you think about that end user, what is the service proposition? What is the business model and the commercial interaction with that consumer? So in that respect, you've really got to get into how those service models might evolve, what the consumer really needs, how you can unlock value for the consumer. And you've seen that happen in many other sectors. So one that's often used is telecommunications. You look at where telecommunications was, 20 years ago, 30 years, it's changed radically, but there's a lot of service propositions that have come forward that delivers a good consumer and end user outcome, but at the same time allows a lot of new markets and all the rest of it to create. So that's the first thing, is the sort of the market, the consumer, etc. And then the other bit is what I'd perhaps term the infrastructure. And what I mean by that really is principally the digitalization aspects, and the buzzword there is interoperability. So how do we ensure that the back office, if you like, is functioning as it should? So we deal with the digital platforms that come through, and Anastasios is already very active in this space. Is a great example. But how do you get the hardware, the software coming through, linking into smart meter networks, communications networks, thinking about the billing systems, the trading systems, looking at maybe blockchain coming through, etc., etc. Cybersecurity as well is another critical aspect there, and I know from talking with previous companies that Israel has got some really great innovators that are really thinking about the cybersecurity challenges, and that may absolutely be an area of cooperation between the two countries for sure. So those are the two areas I think that are big opportunities, and I'm sure, as I say, over the next 10 years we'll see a radical change in that whole area.
Thank you very much, Paul. So before we'll go back to the main event, I want to pick up a few questions that from our chat box here. So I'll answer Daniel's question and Danny's question together. Let me just read them out loud. So Daniel Schwab asks, for how long is the IEC monopoly on transmission and distribution supposed to remain in place? And Danny asks, Gal, there are many barriers for deployment of renewables. Shouldn't the IEC focus first and foremost on energy efficiency in the building stock to reduce overall demand, and on demand side management and reduce peaks? Okay, so going back to Daniel's question, so we are now, as also Nir mentioned, in the middle of implementing the first reform. Okay, implementing a reform after so many years of it being in a constant certain way is always something that takes time. Now the pressure is clear, and us not having that much time as maybe our UK partners had, that is also clear. We sometimes hear, as I said, certain voices already talking about the second reform needed, and the transmission and distribution is basically the last segment that has not been privatized. So if there will be another reform, it's a bit early to talk about, but obviously it will deal also with this segment. And to answer in short Danny's question about the electricity energy efficiency, so yes, that is of course something that is being dealt with. I will say that the Electricity Authority is less involved with. The Ministry of Energy is the governmental body that is in charge of electricity efficiency. And talking about demand shifts, and management, reducing peaks. So yeah, we have a few pilots that we are now starting to initiate that are supposed to bring eventually to curving peaks and to shifting demand from certain hours to others. So yeah, I think we will be much more knowledgeable and learn from these pilots once they're done, and of course be able to take it to the bigger step and higher levels. I will take another question for Paul by Steve that asks, there is a large price differential between gas and electricity prices in the UK. How is this likely to impact uptake in electricity-driven heat pumps versus gas heating, and the heating costs to consumers?
Yeah, I mean, it is an issue for sure in the UK. The good thing is there's as big a push as there's ever been to try and get these back in balance. I think I read somewhere recently, I think the carbon levies on a typical electricity bill is something like 20% compared to about 1.5% for a gas bill. So it's for the same carbon output, if you like, in terms of carbon emissions. So it is significant. And clearly, if if we're looking to move towards electrification, then that's not a good thing. And if we can try to get more parity between the two, then that will help drive the take up of heat pumps. It's not the only answer. This the point I was making about incentives to the consumer and thinking about future service models, I think is also key. We need to be able to provide a better service proposition and outcome for some of these new solutions, especially if we're switching to something that is, even with better alignment of gas and electricity bills, you're still going to have a price difference compared to a typical gas boiler. So you're going to need to find ways in which you can provide greater service propositions, and one of the ways to do that is to find additional value streams that can feed into those business models through ancillary services on the network. So, for instance, if you have flexibility with the heat pump, maybe there's other revenue streams that can come in, and maybe some new service providers can offer a better service proposition to the consumer that can allow take up of low carbon solutions. So there's lots of ways to do it, but yeah, Steve's absolutely correct. That's definitely something that needs to be addressed, and as I say, there's quite a big push, or growing push, and I think government's quite receptive to the issue there.
Thank you, Paul. So before we take the last question from our chat box, Anastasios, would you like to add anything?
Sure. If I could take a step back and just add on what you mentioned earlier about the various technologies that are used. I don't think it's about focusing on a single technology really. And while renewables have been in the forefront the last decade or two, and yes, this is of course for the good of the planet. But yes, there are various challenges involved as well in their deployment. We've seen other technologies like demand-side management or energy efficiency, but I don't think it's about focusing on a single or a couple of technologies. It's about making sure that we best use what we have, and this can be any type of renewables, demand-side management, and energy efficiency. And we've seen regulation changing over the decades towards enabling these various types of technologies to play a vital role. Even energy efficiency, we've seen it being used as a measure to reward consumers, if you want. In certain states in the United States, it has been used as a trading product, essentially, in the market to remunerate customers. So what I'm trying to say really is about how we can unlock a whole energy system that was mentioned earlier also by Paul and other speakers on the main stage, towards ensuring that you appropriately capture all technologies across the various energy vectors, and also across the scales, from the low voltage local networks upstream to the distribution networks and transmission systems, with each type of assets and technologies that may be embedded in these systems. I think this would be of particular importance as we go forward.
Great. Thank you, Anastasios. And last question by Shelley, and I'm going to give Nir the opportunity to answer. Shelley asks, what incentives and regulatory changes do you recommend be put in place to accelerate the transition to a higher percent of renewables? And how can we make them happen?
It's funny that you're giving me where you can share the.
I think it's more interesting that way, but if you want, I'll also answer after.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier the coordination and synchronization between the ministries, which I think is really important to achieve the goals. And once these goals are achieved faster, more trust will be immersed within the ministries to continue and increase the goals. Because I think the first issue, like I mentioned earlier, with the coordination and synchronization, I think there's not enough belief in the Electric Authority, the Ministry of Energy, that we will reach these goals. So the business sector and the private, the households also need to pitch in and show that we can achieve the goals and increase the penetration for dual usage, for example. Every side needs to take its cut, and this will also help the regulatory players increase the percentage. And I think another very important thing is what is the goal? Currently, the main goal of the Electric Authority is lowest price. And when you have the lowest price as a goal versus have maximum energy, renewable energy penetration, you have a problem, because you don't maximize potential when your goal is minimum price. You maximize potential when you think the goal is maximum RE penetration. Now, it's true that we are over the parity of the economic pricing for RE versus gas. It's cheaper with RE with solar than with gas. But if you take RE and storage, we're not beyond the parity point. I think we'll be there next year or 2 or 3 years from that. And then it will be easier to combine the goals of cheapest electricity as a goal and the highest renewable energy as a goal. But I think the Israeli government should take bold goals. You first need to take our part in the world, in the global fight for global warming. And our part in Israel is higher percentage of RE penetration and lower percentage of carbon emission, and make this change more rapid than currently is. You first put the goals and then you achieve them. It doesn't go the other way around. Kennedy first said we'll put a man on the moon in 10 years from now, and now everything goes into place to achieve that goal. Ben-Gurion said we are building, we're announcing the independence of the state of Israel, even though it was a difficult decision. This is what leadership is. We need to first hear the leaders say we need a higher percentage of renewables, and then we will be able to achieve it. It doesn't go the other way around.
Thank you, Neil. Now I will also answer from the regulation point of view. I will say, and this is my opinion, my personal opinion, when you look at the Electricity Authority and when you look at the last decade, okay, I showed a few slides, it was all about the pricing, okay? Setting the right price or building the best model that will bring the best competition and eventually the price, or tenders, or all of the market aspect that has to do with the economics. Okay, I think that this decade has new obstacles that have to do more with us having less land reserves and less available network. And as I said, developing the network is something that takes a lot of time. So we have to be creative. And in order to do that, we need to focus our energy mainly on barriers, on seeing how we can solve all kinds of problems, and being much more proactive in that. Not only setting great tenders and knowing that the companies will offer good prices for them, but also being, as a government, there to open up new potentials for all these great prices to be implemented. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges we have from the regulation point of view. And of course, everything is connected to that, and we can talk much more about this, but this is in short. Okay, so I want to thank all our panelists, Anastasios, Neil, and Paul. I myself learned a lot, and I really hope that our audience also received some knowledge from all of this conversation. And I think everybody's, wait, what is Cody saying? Okay, I think everybody's supposed to go now to the networking room, or to the main event. I'm not sure, but you'll figure it out. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
Thank you
to be on the
all.
panel.
It was a
Thank you.
great pleasure.
Bye-bye.